Welcome back. It is our 10th lecture of the course History of Bengal Art and Architecture. It is part of the segment where we were discussing the Islamic architecture of Bengal, and it is the third lecture on it. In this segment, through sequence of lectures, we are exploring the architecture of Islamic Bengal from the advent of Islam to Sultanate to Mughal. In the first lecture of the segment, we have seen that it took about 600 years from the advent of Islam in Bengal to evolve as Islamic territory. It is unfortunate to have little traces of the mosque of that period. It was previously discussed that there is yet a chance to trace back those monuments if archaeologists could take unbiased drive. We are hoping it will happen soon. It is evident that mosques built during those periods were in temporary or semi-permanent in nature. They were built following the local tradition to fulfill the new requirement of prayer space. Only a few were built in permanent nature, mostly donated by the ruling class, maybe people of another religion, to facilitate their subjects who were following Islam. It is prevalent in this region that rulers are building religious structures different than his own belief. Some of them also maybe were built by wealthy merchants too. From the political history, we know that since the Umayyad period, Muslim conquest took place to conquer the Indian subcontinent. They were only able to win only some parts of Pakistan till the 11th century. When in the 12th century, Ghuri the emperor conquered and settled at Delhi, they started to march towards Bengal. Eventually, Bengal became a province of the Delhi Sultanate in the early 13th century CE in 1204. Trace of mosque built in Bengal during the Delhi Sultanate is rare, whereas an abundance of the mosque is being identified built during the Bengal Sultanate. Almost 3/4 of mosques were built in Bengal during the independent Sultanate period between 1342 to 1576. The characteristics of the mosques have changed a lot over time. Bengali architects integrated the traditional elements and developed the characteristics of the mosque using the local feature of their houses and their locally available materials. It was a great challenge for the local designer to build an ample prayer space for the mosque, who were traditionally practiced to build mainly temples with small garbhagriha. It could be further assumed that many trials and errors were made during the earlier phase of the Bengali mosque evolution. However, the experiments continues, and we find different types of Sultanate mosques were built in Bengal. Depending on climate, topography, availability of the material, and the number of populations, the designer implements their style to build those Sultanate mosques which are different from the central Islamic land. Mainly, they acquired the feature for the mosque from the traditional village hut, Hindu temples, and combined them with traditional Islamic architecture. In this case, traditionally Islamic architecture requires ample space for prayer purpose. As we know, the basic form in Muslim architecture is a circle formed by a point which is a generative stage produce the square that is a symbol of Kaaba, the supreme purity in terms of Islamic philosophy. That is why the interaction between the square and the circle and the space in between is the basic and most highlighted order that has been practiced throughout the Muslim world. We may already know that architecture before Islam arrives in Bengal also had a tradition of using the square and circle for their shrine. As a result, when Islam arrives in this land, they found that local designers were skilled to deal with square and circles to produce great architecture. Using those local experts, Muslims built magnificent mosques during the Sultanate era. There is a possibility of two choices for the layout of a mosque considering the functional requirement of the prayer space. One is square and the other is rectangular with the longer side towards Qibla. In the case of Bengal, it should be north-south elongated. In the Islamic tradition, we may see the Dome of the Rock built in 692 inside the Great Mosque at Jerusalem is the perfect example of the square and circle composition in a square form. Though it looks like an octagonal in plan, it was generated by two squares, one rotated to 45 degrees to help the circle fit better on top. Many later mosques in the Islamic world followed the form and generated a different type of single dome mosque around the world. Bengalis have to tweak the concept due to their corbelled construction method. Instead of using big dome, they used a small dome supported on massive masonry wall for single dome mosque with square prayer space. For the rectangular prayer space mosque, the multi-dome was used, which was supported by 4 columns instead of masonry wall. For the large mosque, the central bay became wider with Chouchala vaulted roof. So based on the shape of the key prayer space, Bengali Sultanate mosque can be primarily divided into two types: square prayer space and rectangular prayer space. The square shaped mosque again is divided into two major categories based on the presence of baranda, without baranda and with baranda. The square mosque without baranda can be further divided into two further groups based on the number of domes, single dome and 9 dome. The rectangular shaped mosque is primarily divided into two groups, the double aisle and the multi-aisle. The double aisle rectangular shaped mosque can be further divided into two groups based on the number of domes, the 6 domes and 10 domes. The 6 dome mosques are most common in this segment. The multi-aisle mosques are mainly the large mosques of Bengal. The large mosque of Bengal is quite similar to the large mosque of the central Islamic world. The main difference is the absence of the courtyard and the minaret. Generally, they have multiple number of aisles and odd numbers of bays in the plan. In this type, some mosques have a more prominent central bay with the vaulted nave and the chouchala roof on the top. That is why, based on the presence of nave, multi-aisle mosques are divided into further two types, with the vaulted nave and without the vaulted nave. It is briefly the development of the Sultanate Mosque of Bengal. Thanks for joining us.